for coming. I'm not expecting so many people to come because it's the last talk. And today it's my pleasure to share some research findings of my PhD research. I'm focusing on both ecosystem soil carbon in a semi-arid woodland. And I hope this knowledge could be useful for future nature resource management planning. As we all know that arid and semi-arid regions occupy more than a third of land area and store 16% of total organic carbon, and the importance of semi-arid and arid ecosystem for global net carbon uptake has recently been highlighted. And models also prove that semi-arid ecosystem could be a dominant controller in the trend and variability of the land carbon dioxide uptake. Woodlands in semi-arid ecosystem are often characterized by patchy vegetation. This is because certain areas are under plant canopies while the large areas are just bare soil. This vegetation arrangement will induce significant differences in microclimate as well as soil property. Plants in semi-arid ecosystems are very much adapted to the water deficiency by using water conservatively, and also very much adapted to the fire disturbance. It is therefore to be expected that carbon accumulation and turnover in semi-arid woodland will respond to the rainfall and bushfire differently than in temperate forests. With global warming, the frequency and the intensity of the long-term drought, heat waves, and bushfire are likely to increase in the dry regions of Australia and globally. And more information about the drivers of the carbon fluxes in this ecosystem is required to advance our understanding of the contribution of dry ecosystem to the global carbon budget. Therefore, this research at least have three research aims. And firstly, we aim to determine the influence of patches and recent bushfire that happened in January 2014 on soil respiration. And we are keen to understand the relationship between soil water content, soil temperature, and soil respiration. And the third, we aim to assess the effect of fire on ecosystem respiration, gross primary productivity, net ecosystem productivity by comparing pre- and post-fire data. This work was conducted in Capron Station, where it's about 300 kilometers away from Adelaide, and it is a very typical semi-arid woodland, and annual rainfall is around 250. The Mallee woodland is dominated by 4 eucalypt species, and approximately 25% of area are under tree canopies. A small proportion a small proportion of the area that covered underneath grasses and spinifex, but largely just bare soil. And soil is also very sandy and alkali. And these two images were taken before and right after the bushfire. You can see from the picture that it is clear that all above ground, the litters, grasses, and spinifex were consumed during the fire. And also the trees around the flux tower all seriously damaged or killed during the fire. And due to the patchy distribution of vegetation and the fuel load distributed unevenly, that induced certain areas was not influenced by the bushfire, ranging in size from less than 1 hectare to more than 10 hectares. And in order to achieve our research aims, we carry out a series of experiments in the field. For soil respiration measurement, we placed 5 replicates underneath each patch and location. Here we have 2 patches. One was under a tree canopy, another is just on the bare soil. And we also have 2 locations. One is unburnt, and another is burnt location. We measure soil respiration monthly for 12 months in total, covering the whole calendar year. And soil respiration, soil temperature, and soil water content were recorded by light core equipment. And for ecosystem carbon flux measurement, you may already heard from my supervisor and my colleague, Georgia Kirby. They talk about the flux tower story before. And I will not introduce the detail of the instrumentation here, but we have multiple sensors that are equipped on the flux tower for working for different purposes. And the flux tower measures the net ecosystem carbon dioxide exchange. And before the raw data can be really used, we have to go through several steps. First, quality control of the data and gap filling. And then we can partition the net ecosystem exchange into gross primary productivity and ecosystem respiration. And this was also an independent experiment that to measure the standing biomass. It was conducted by Georgia Kerber and my principal supervisor. And we firstly set up a 1 hectare plot just next to the flux tower, and we further sampled 10 transects within 1 hectare area. The total number of trees per hectare was estimated, and 3 randomly trees were selected from both unburnt and burnt location, and we took all the fresh samples of trunks, branches, and leaves back to the lab and dry in the oven for a few days. And we considered that 50% of dry mass will equals to the same quantity of carbon. For data analysis part, we use linear mixed models to analyze the effect of bushfire, patch, mines, and their interaction on soil respiration. We use linear regression models for detect the relationships of the 3 variables. And the NEP, GPP, and R-eco pre-fire were compared to post-fire using the winter season data. And here is our result. The first figure showing that soil respiration was significantly higher underneath tree canopies than the intercanopies, and it changed over time. And the highest soil respiration were recorded in January 2015. That was measured a week after extremely heavy rain event. And surprisingly, the bushfire has no effect on the soil respiration. And we further running linear regression models, we found that both soil temperature and soil water content influence soil respiration. And in the relationship, soil water content was a primary controller, while soil temperature was only a modifier. In other words, soil respiration would not respond to the increase of soil temperature if soil water content is limiting. By using the formula generated by the linear regression models, and we also having another database of continuous and complete soil water content, soil temperature data, we then able to simulate soil respiration at daily scale over the entire study period. And here, the ups and downs of simulated soil respiration were mainly driven by the changes in soil water content. And the top right, it shows that the Mallee ecosystem was net carbon sink during most of the time in 2013, while it changed to a net carbon source right after the bushfire. And luckily, we saw that the net carbon uptake was resumed since May 2015. From here. And both ecosystem respiration and gross primary productivity were reduced by both bushfire, and it slowly recovered. And this carbon turnover table showing that the living biomass actually accumulated carbon very slowly. And both two measurements agree with each other very well. And the liter input, liter fold could be the dominant carbon input in this ecosystem, while soil respiration was a man